Welcome. Today we are reviewing and discussing the RT Pen Company Concord Gen 3. Alright, so full transparency, full disclaimer here. I want to tell you the story of how I received this pen. So I had reviewed the Concord Gen 1 from Rob as one of my, I want to say it was one of my first pen reviews. And that was actually a donation by Brownie. So it turns out that was Rob's second ever pen, I think it was, and I didn't even know that at the time of the interview. Brownie happened to live by him, and that's how he happened upon the guy and happened into getting his, first or second pen ever. He sent it to me, I did that review. Time goes by, I ended up asking Rob to do my first correspondence video where we interview small makers in the market. He said, yeah, and then we talked at length, and he ended up calling me the next day and saying, hey, I'm going to make you a pen. So he said, what kind of colors would you like? And in that interview, if you go back and listen, when he happened to show me that material, I was like, oh, that's really cool. That looks just like a lot of my guitar picks that I have. So I've been using these Fender guitar picks, and they're a celluloid, and they've got kind of all those same colors, right? We've got like the whites, the blues inlaid, a little bit of the black, and occasionally you'll get like darker parts, or maybe even some pinks and oranges in there. So he already had that on hand. This resin is from RT Pen Company, and this was a Papillion, I believe the name of their resin was. Anyway, so Rob went ahead and he designed me a Concord Gen 3. So he ended up making me this pen and then shipping it out to me, and it was a marvelous experience. And, I said I don't feel right accepting a pen for free because, I review pens. Now, I'm not getting paid. This is all, 100% my thoughts, my independent reviewing, and there's nothing that I want to influence that for you guys. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you my thoughts. So anyway, I didn't feel right accepting a pen for free. So what I said was, tell me your charity of choice and we'll get some money to your charity. That is Mission 22. We're going to put that down in the description. Please check that out. So I made some donations. I donated a pen set, which ended up going for about $200 toward Mission 22. So we got Mission 22 some money. So that way this pen was paid for, but the money didn't go to Rob. It ended up going directly to charity. So in that sense, I feel okay giving this a fair and, impartial review. But I do have to be transparent about where this pen came from. It was a gift, and then I put the money forward for the gift to charity. So that way I did end up paying for the pen. All right. Before we go under the hood, let's just look at the resin here. So this resin is a RT Pen Company resin in Papillion, I believe it was. Now it's a cloudy day here, so I'm going to splice in some footage of this in the sunlight for you. I didn't leave you without a sunlight view because that changes the colors and the resins and everything. Look at this, guys. Whites to purples to blues. Can you tell in there? When you shine it and you actually turn it, there's like blues that come out in the whites. It's awesome. Look at that. That's awesome. I'm pretty sure this resin was from RT Pen Co. I'll double check that, but yeah, I think that's where this resin was from. And look. And welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that sunlight footage because this is a gorgeous resin, especially when you see all the blues popping out and the whites. There's even some greens in there too. How do you pronounce this? So Rob, if you know him, he is into a kind of a Patriot theme. He's got another model, the Lexington. This one is the Concord. And then he just has a brand new one called the Betsy Ross. So he's definitely going in the theme of that kind of early American history vibe. So I am from the area. I can say people around here would call it Concord. That's how people would pronounce it from Massachusetts, around Boston. Hey, where are you going? I'm going to Concord. However, I'm also a fan of aviation. And if you ask me how to pronounce the jet, I would say that the jet, which is basically spelled the same, is the Concorde. So I'm going to go ahead and call this the Concorde. I think that's going to be more universally accepted as long as you guys still let me have my WADA. All right, so let's look at some of the differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 3. The Gen 1, you can still go back and watch the video. First obvious difference, ink window. So he put an ink window in here, and it is seamless. I cannot feel a seam here. So he did an excellent, excellent job. Now let's show you the other cool thing about the ink window here. So that's a converter. You can actually eyedropper this. He put this with an O-ring, so I could eyedropper it, which I haven't done yet because the converter works so well. But he made this so the body hides everything but the ink window in the converter. So I just think that's super, super cool. And it works really well. As you can see there, I've got some ink in there about halfway through my converter's fill, right? So the ink window itself works really well. I love it. I love how well it's integrated, how it's seamless. The next change we've got a finial with his name down there, RT Pen Company. So that's a new integration between the Gen 1 and the Gen 3. Also on this Gen 3, we've got this beautiful rose. Now he custom makes these roses, drills out the cap, and then inlays them with an epoxy. So from the side, it's like smooth. It's actually just a hair rounded too, which is nice. It's not totally flat. I kind of like that rounded feel. So, all right. So those are the big differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 3. Actually, there's one more difference to show you. All right, so this is the original nib that came with that pen, and he has since started, since the Gen 1, he puts his engraving, or I think it's laser etching. Anyway, so that is on his nibs now. So a big shout out there. That kind of matches his motif. Where is it? Right there, so you can kind of see them together. So that's very cool. RT Pen Company. Now he used to go by Patriot Pen Turner, kind of slash still sort of does here and there. As an older moniker, so that's where you'll hear some of that Patriot Pen talk coming from. So it's not his official company name. It was kind of his name before he got started. Now he is officially RT Pen Company. Now let's go under the hood. So you could see that I have already removed the nib. That's because I put a specialty nib on here. I put a gold nib from FPR, and this is a full flex gold nib on this pen. This nib cost almost as much as the pen would have itself, so this is a doubly awesome thing. So this nib was actually designed from Flexible Nib Factory. So FPR commissioned these nibs from FNF, and they've got a nice Ebonite feed on there as well. So this has a very awesome nib. So note how large this is. This is one of my biggest pens. It actually might be my biggest pen. I haven't compared it, but I've got a feeling it is my biggest pen in my personal collection. So it is on the larger side. So it goes well past the crook of my hand there. If we'll look here at where my grip section is, it is almost flat. There's a tiny type of indent there, but it's barely noticeable. But you do have a nice decent flare up top to index your fingers with so they don't slide up and over. When I do position this, my forefingers don't feel the threads at all. Where I rest my thumb, a little bit, I feel it, but you know, that's part of the threading being where it is on the caps. That goes for all fountain pens, guys. Let's look, actually, since I'm bringing it up, let's go ahead and look at another model. All right, here's a Leonardo. This one was a Supernova with a different nib, but anyway, we are going to go ahead and just compare the grip sections here because this is a pretty popular style pen. So you can see the RT Pen Company is a little bit longer, a little bit thinner, and the threads are further away from your fingers as they would be from the Leonardo here. All right, so this indexes very nicely, and the extra girth and weight up here lends well to embellishments. When you kind of are writing, your nib kind of wants to float away, and that really works well with those wispy kind of lines that you're making when you're trying to use some nice cursive. And the same goes for when you're using a flex. So let's take a look here. So this nib, when I first got it, if you watch my unboxing, I called it a wet noodle. I was using Iroshizuku ink in there, and that ink flows very well in any pen. So with this pen and this nib being a flex, it was almost too much of a wet noodle. So I experimented with some different inks. I went to a Vinta Cosmic Blue Cosmos. This is the only ink that I've ever had actually clog up a pen, and it was a medium. Anyway, so I used this ink. I was like, if this ink clogs, then maybe on a wet noodle, it'll kind of balance things out. So I tried that, and it actually did manage to give some false starts and a little bit of issue, even on such a wet noodle flex pen. So note to the wise for that particular ink. So I went ahead and I replaced it with a different ink. Now this is a newer ink that I got. It's quickly become one of my favorite inks. And that ink is 1798 Cornaline d'Egypte from J. Urban. Now this ink is a nice matchup, even though it doesn't match the physical colors of this pen. It matches the nib really well, just because the flow and everything works well. So it's still a bit of a wet noodle when you do flex. It does take a while to dry, but your actual performance of the pen is much nicer. This nib on this pen is grand. it is, I mean, even look at that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on a dot grid, so you can see, like your standard lines on a regular lined paper would be down here. So let me show you that. Right, so if you're using this on a standard ruled paper, which is more like that, it would almost be a little bit overkill, but you don't have to because it's a flex. So let me do that same exact thing with absolutely no pressure. There we go. So you can really see the difference in that smaller typical line. But when you combine this flex on the larger grids like I do, you get way more shading and everything is just bigger and better. And that's what this pen is about. This pen makes everything bigger and better because it is a bigger and better pen. It is bigger than any pen I own, I believe. And it is better than the Gen 1. We've seen a lot from Rob. A lot of new innovations. This ink window, right? His new finials with his, there it is. His new finials there. He's got his rose motif going in all of his pens. Note too, he matches the resin. So not all of his roses are this color. He matched this particular resin to this pen for me. So just all of that, all this custom work, it's amazing. Add to the fact the guy is always working toward charity and helping folks. And, it's just, this pen takes a very special place in my collection. It takes a very special place to me for all of those reasons. It performs exceptionally well. It's bigger than most pens, which if you don't like big pens, it's not something for you. But I like big pens. I've got big hands, so I love this pen. I went ahead and I scouted out a wonderful gold nib to bring this pen to its fullest. And now this is something that I write with often, and I love writing with it, and I keep coming back to it. And so thank you for watching our review of the RT Pen Company Concord Gen 3 with an ink window. This is a marvelous, kingly, stately pen that leaves me wanting to have an excuse to write more. So thank you for everything, Rob. I'm happy we were able to help your charity of choice through all of your great ventures and your generosity. And we hope to see some great stuff from you soon. He does have 2 more models, like I said, the Lexington and the Betsy Ross. So look forward to more reviews, more new models coming from RT Pen Company. And thank you again, Rob. It's been great getting to know you and great using your pens.